Welcome back to Just Meg Elise, a podcast about healing, remembering who you are, and diving into deeper alignment. I'm Meg, and I'll be your host. So today I want to talk about how to spot an emotionally immature person and how to deal with those type of people without losing your own peace and without losing your own balance. Understanding when somebody is emotionally immature, it can help you with a lot of confusion and also to help you navigate when those people can possibly be manipulative or not be able to take responsibility for the parts that they play and the things that happen. And we're going to go over all of that. And you might not even realize how much emotional labor you're taking on when you're dealing with these people until, these things are discussed. And so that's why I think it's important to talk about this type of stuff. So I want to give you a list of clear examples of what an emotionally immature person might do or say. First, I'm going to read them all, the main things, and then I'm going to give you examples for all of them. So it would be avoiding responsibility, blaming others for their emotions, poor emotion regulation, difficulty with boundaries, possibly a constant need for validation, and overreacting to any feedback. And now I want to give examples for each of those. So for the first one, avoiding responsibility, they'll deflect when you bring up a concern, and then they'll turn it around and make it your fault. If you've ever heard of DARVO, deny, attack, and then reverse victim and offender, meaning they deny that they've done anything wrong, then they attack you, and then they reverse it to make you the perpetrator and them the victim. Let's say you're bringing a concern to an emotionally immature person. They can say something like, "You're overreacting," or "That never happened," which is gaslighting. Gaslighting, for those who don't know, is making you question your own reality. When they say things like, "That never happened," you're remembering that wrong. It's because they're feeling shame and they can't admit to what they did or what they said. But instead of admitting that, they gaslight you to believe that's not what they said in the first place, or that's not what happened in the first place. And it's a way to make you question your own reality. And it's a subtle form of abuse because you do start to question your reality. I've been gaslit by, I can think of a family member specifically who has gaslit me for years about a certain subject. And then one day he finally admitted that I was right all along. So you've been gaslighting me all these years to make it seem like my memory was incorrect. That's so messed up. And it's a form of abuse. And they can also say things like, "You're just being too sensitive." Okay, so the next one, blaming others for their emotions. When you bring a grievance to them or something like that, they can sometimes say, "Well, you made me feel that way," or "You made me react that way," or "You made me angry," or "You made me hit the wall," instead of owning their response, especially if it was over the top or abusive. "You made me mad. You made me call you names. You made me drive recklessly. You made me yell at you. You made me break that thing." It's never their fault. It's always your fault for taking them to that level emotionally. Or, "I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have hurt you. I wouldn't have yelled at you. I wouldn't have broke that thing if you hadn't done this." That is a very emotionally immature response. It's not being able to hold that they possibly did something wrong and always turning it back on you. You're the problem. I don't have to emotionally regulate. You brought me to that point, that sort of thing. So now the next one, we go into poor emotion regulation. Think shutting down, meltdowns, passive aggressive, stonewalling, So let's say during an outburst, they'll say, "You always do this to me. You always bring this up. You always bring up the past," when really you're just trying to seek closure or have a healthy conversation about something that happened. And they always say, "Well, you just keep bringing this up," when that's not what you're doing. You're just trying to bring some closure to the conversation and they never want to talk about it, Or they can also stonewall you for days, meaning that they just don't speak to you and they use silence as a form of punishment. I do want to say one thing here. Sometimes when people get in an argument, they do need a moment to cool off. They do need a moment to go in the separate room and calm down and emotionally regulate and then come back from a more regulated place to talk about that more. But that's different than giving somebody the full silent treatment and the silent treatment for days, or not answering text messages. That is a form of punishment instead of having a healthy, grounded conversation about something. They also have a lot of difficulty with boundaries. They push past when you say no. They feel entitled to your time or your energy. They don't care what boundaries you've put up for yourself. They're going to do whatever they want to do, regardless of how it makes you feel. And especially some emotionally immature people, they'll almost push past your boundaries as a way to like provoke you sometimes. Like they know it's going to upset you if they do this thing, and they sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they do it on purpose because they know it's going to upset you, and they're getting like some sort of satisfaction out of that, which is so, yeah, it's scary to think about that people can get satisfaction out of somebody else's pain, but they do. Some people really do. So to go back to the conversation about difficulty with boundaries, sometimes it can sound like, well, you're just so distant lately, when you're just living your life. But they expect you to be constantly available to them, constantly in contact with them, constantly checking in with them. And like, I will say this, obviously communication and contact and checking in with your loved ones is healthy and needed in any relationship to keep that relationship healthy. But it's also not needed all of the time. It's somebody feeling entitled to all of your time, to spending every second with them, to checking in all the time, to checking in multiple times a day or multiple times a week, depending on the type of relationship that it is. Because different relationships obviously require different things and different amounts of check-ins, but it's like when they need something over and above the healthy limit of that. And then they'll say things like, well, I thought you cared about me, and like trying to guilt you into being more available for them, right? Also, they need a constant need for validation. You become their emotional regulator, and it's draining. It's so draining. And it's like, especially if you grew up in an environment where maybe your parent, your caregiver, your sibling, somebody was emotionally volatile, you become very hyper attuned, right? Like you don't even realize you're doing it, but you're monitoring their emotions. How are they feeling right now? What sort of situation am I walking into right now? What sort of energy are they bringing into the room right now? So that you know how to react. You become very good at like being a little chameleon so that you don't upset them. That is very draining on you, and we don't even realize it. And in that way, you are becoming the emotional regulator for another person outside of yourself, which is not your responsibility, especially if you were a child and this was happening, and you had to emotionally regulate your parents or your grandparents or a sibling, whatever it was, that wasn't your responsibility. But we took on that responsibility just to simply feel safe in that moment. And then another part of this is we carry that mechanism forward with us into our adult life, and we then find ourselves like being hyper vigilant in other situations that don't necessarily require it, And also that is a form of CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress, meaning that there were multiple times throughout your life where you were having to regulate somebody's emotions, or somebody was like really angry around you all the time and you had to like, act a certain way, only say certain things in order to stay safe. Like that is complex trauma over time. And so an emotionally immature person can cause harm. They can. And I see what created an emotionally immature person, and we're going to talk about that as well, but it doesn't, like we've talked about, intent doesn't negate impact. Even though somebody doesn't have the tools to properly communicate, I understand that, but they do need to seek out professional help to help them start to be able to become better communicators and to get those tools and to get all of those things. But I also look at the fact that like they are possibly harming other people with their behavior, or being manipulative or even abusive in some situations. So back to the list that I was talking about and them needing constant validation, and you become their emotional regulator. They can ask you things like, do you even love me anymore? Or I'm not important to you, or everyone else gets attention but me, again, going back to the boundaries thing. Because like I said, communication and being in contact with your loved ones and checking in with your friends and family, that's important if they're healthy people to be around. If they're not, you get to decide how much time that they get with you. But there is a level of like healthiness there. And sometimes emotionally immature people, they want more than is healthy to give. They want more of your time, more of your energy, more of your communication than is healthy to give. And then they'll say stuff like, everybody else gets more attention from me than you do, to like guilt you into giving them more than you're able to give. And it can be very, very draining. So they also overreact to any feedback. Any feedback feels like a personal attack. Any feedback that like, hey, maybe you made this mistake. Can we try again? Can we work on this? Or this hurt my feelings, or this thing that you said hurt my feelings. Any of that is taken as, well, I'm just a bad person. I guess I just can't do anything right. They're not able to hold that. They're not able to take that in and say to themselves, wow, maybe I really did make a mistake here. How can I fix this? Or how can I do better moving forward? They're not able to have that nuance. They're not able to have those thoughts of maybe I messed up here without spiraling into shame. A lot of people, when they're really emotionally immature, they, like, if somebody says you did this thing wrong, or maybe, you didn't do this thing perfectly, you hurt my feelings, etc., they take anything as you did something wrong as I am wrong, I am bad, I did this bad thing, therefore I am bad. They're not able to hold the nuance of it, of no, you're not a bad person. It's just, can we work on this? Can we shift this? Can you not speak to me like that moving forward? Can you, whatever it is, whatever you're talking about, they're not able to hold that nuance in their head of, I made a mistake and I can fix this. And that mistake doesn't make me a bad person. And they're just not able to hold feedback without spiraling into shame. And again, sometimes they'll lash out. They take any feedback as a threat, and they spiral out of control sometimes. Like, I guess I'm just the bad guy now, or I guess you just think you're just so perfect, or I guess I just can't do anything right. When you never said that, you're coming to them with compassion and love and empathy and trying to talk about this thing, but they're not able to hold that. So a lot of root causes of emotional immaturity are they mostly trace back to unhealed childhood wounds and environments where their emotions didn't feel safe and their needs weren't met, and healthy communication and all of that, it wasn't modeled to them, so they do not have those tools. Emotional maturity was never modeled to them, and so they then carry that mechanism forward with them. And here's another thing: if acting that way throughout their life, meaning avoiding responsibility, blaming others, pushing past people's boundaries, seeking validation, overreacting to feedback, if those things got them to the end point that they wanted, meaning if those things in the past, if those behaviors got them the things that they needed, even though they're manipulative, if they got them what they needed, they're going to keep repeating that behavior, because some people are easily manipulated by those tactics. Haven't we all been? I think all of us at some point have been like guilted or manipulated by an emotionally immature person. And that doesn't make us bad people for having experienced that. But that person, if they see that their tactics are working, they're absolutely going to keep doing them. That's why they keep doing them, because they're getting some sort of benefit from them, and so they're going to keep up that behavior. And until, here's another thing, it's not your responsibility to fix them. It's not your responsibility to coach them. And that can be the hardest part, especially when it's like somebody you really love and you want them in your life. When they're emotionally immature, you're like hoping that they seek therapy. You're hoping that they learn the error of their ways and start to heal, but they may never do that. They may never do that. Unfortunately, we all wish that they would, and I hope that they do, and I hope they find healing, but they may never do that. And then that's when you have to tell yourself, okay, I need to start to put up some boundaries with these people. And sometimes those boundaries are just not being near those people as often, or not interacting with those people as often. That boundary could also be them not being in your life at all. It's whatever's going to be best for you. And I think it's important too to maybe speak to your own therapist or trusted friend, about this before you make decisions like that. But the other thing is too, resentment starts to build when you're not setting boundaries with these types of people. And so that's when it comes back to you, right? Like, we cannot ever change another person. We just can't. They have to want to change themselves. And us trying, it's emotionally taxing on yourself. And that's not fair to yourself. We sometimes like try and fix them or help them. And I get that. I get that's coming from a place of love, but it ends up depleting you. Like, I can think of two family members who are incredibly emotionally immature, and I've tried to have healthy, grounded, productive conversations with them, but they are not able to hold that. Nothing is ever their fault. They cannot self-reflect and see that maybe they made a mistake there, or maybe the problem is me in that situation, that they're not able to hold that. Because I have family members who, some of them I have to love through bulletproof glass. I still love them. I want the best for them. I want them to be healthy and happy, but being around them is so draining to me that it's just not healthy for me. So I need to love you from a distance, and there's nothing wrong with that. That does not make you a bad person if somebody is emotionally immature to the point where they're just not able to be in your life. So here are some boundaries, or how to manage some of the dynamics that come up. So here's like a boundary. I created kind of like a boundary sort of mantra. You can say to yourself, loving someone does not mean overextending myself. And here's one for like detachment. If you're having trouble like detaching from these type of people, if you're not wanting them in your life, as an example, I can care for them without carrying what's not mine. I can care for them without carrying what's not mine. Also, if you're needing like compassion from a distance, here's another mantra. Some people need healing that I cannot give to them. Some people need healing that I cannot give to them. And it is not my responsibility to give to them. It's not. So you guys know I love journaling prompts. I also wrote down some journaling prompts to help us with this today. So here's the first one. When have I ever confused love with caretaking? So I found myself slipping into this weekend. It's like I need to make sure everybody around me is good and fed, and do you need anything? Do you need me to get you a drink while I go inside? And don't get me wrong, I see that sometimes comes from a loving place, but it needs to be reciprocal, right? If I get up and I'm asking you, do you need any snacks? Do you need any drinks while I'm up? Are you also doing that for me? Because if you're not, then I am stepping into the caretaker role and the people-pleasing role, and it's not being reciprocated back to me. If it's reciprocal, that's healthy, that's loving, that's, you do for me, I do for you. But if it's one-sided, that's very different. That's possibly you stepping into the caretaker role. So here's another journaling prompt. When have I felt responsible for somebody else's emotions? And again, it's a lot of times an emotionally immature person, and they're very good at making you the problem. You made me angry. You made me punch the wall. You, never me. Here's another one. What part of me believes I need to fix others in order to feel worthy? So here's another one. When do I ever minimize my needs in order to keep the peace? So again, with emotionally immature people, sometimes feel like you're walking on eggshells, and sometimes we minimize what I need, my own needs, in order to fulfill yours, in order to make sure you're happy, make sure you're good. And then we're neglecting ourselves. And here's the last one. What boundary would protect my peace today? What boundary would protect my peace today? So I was trying to think of an example of a boundary that you might set. So here's one. I won't reply to texts that feel emotionally heavy until I have the capacity. I allow myself to take space without explaining. So that might be a boundary that you set for yourself to protect your peace. I won't reply to texts that feel emotionally heavy until I have the capacity. I let myself take space without explaining, right? You are allowed to take a moment to respond. That is different from the silent treatment. The silent treatment is a form of punishment. You taking a moment, and again, I'm just using this as an example, as a boundary that you might set. You taking a moment is emotion regulation. It's self-care, making sure you're good before focusing on somebody else, before responding to somebody else. Here's some other boundaries. I say no to plans that feel draining, like being around an emotionally immature person, even if guilt arises. Here's another one. I won't take on somebody else's mood or urgency as my own. I don't take on somebody else's mood or urgency as my own. Here's another. I pause before responding to criticism, and I check in with myself first. Here's another one. I won't explain myself more than once. My no is enough. I won't explain myself more than once. My no is enough. So I want to do one quick exercise with you as well. If you're dealing with an emotionally immature person in your life, we're just going to inhale for a count of 4. We're going to exhale slowly, and I want you to place your hand on your heart, and we're just going to say a little mantra together. So before we do this, we'll just take a deep inhale together. Exhale. And now inhale for a count of 4. Hold for a moment, and exhale slowly. You can exhale through the nose or through the mouth. And now as we end our exhale and come back to regular breath, I want you to tell yourself, I am safe to let go of what isn't mine to carry. I am safe to let go of what isn't mine to carry. And maybe you can even say, I love you. I love you. Telling yourself, I love you. So hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you want to go deeper on your healing journey, there are tons of different ways to connect. You can purchase a copy of my book, Don't You Dare. It's available on Amazon. If you want to dive into the ego voice or shadow work, I think it's an excellent tool for that. I also have my Most Loved meditation bundle available for purchase, and all of the stuff we're talking about is going to be linked below. I also have a new course called the Affirmation Reset course, which is available. This course helps you to rewire negative and limiting beliefs. I also offer one-on-one coaching and hypnotherapy services. If you're interested in a session with me, please visit my website, meganshirey.com, meganshirey.com. I also teach a free live guided meditation on the Insight Timer app every Sunday morning at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, 8 Mountain, 7 Pacific, so please join us there. And if you enjoy these episodes, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and please leave us a review. It helps us to reach more listeners. May you be happy, may you be well, may you be joyous and at ease, sending you infinite love and light, and until next time.